Hello and welcome to this video on competition policy focusing on mergers and takeovers. So in this video we're going to look at how the competition authorities protect consumers when there is a merger or a takeover. So we have previously established that monopolies may be undesirable from the point of view of consumers. We have seen that under a monopoly situation we're likely to have a higher price than in perfect competition, and also a lower quantity. In fact, we've seen there's a number of disadvantages of monopoly. Generally speaking, higher prices, the possibility of price discrimination, less incentive to be efficient. Now, often monopoly conditions can come about as firms grow larger. And one of the reasons that firms may grow larger is because they merge with another business or that they take over a business. So mergers and takeovers can create monopoly conditions. And as we've seen, when we have a monopoly, there is the risk here of the consumer in this image being screwed, but we might say a loss of consumer surplus or poor conditions for the consumer. So whose responsibility is it to protect consumers from the negative effects of a market supplying in monopoly? Who looks after our wants and needs as consumers? Well, the answer would be the government. The government is responsible for protecting consumers through consumer protection law and the other vehicles that it has available to it. So governments regulate mergers and takeovers from the perspective of protecting consumers. In the UK, the body that's part of the state that regulates, investigates mergers and takeovers is known as the Competition and Markets Authority, or CMA. In the EU, the European Commission Competition Authority oversee, regulate, investigate mergers and takeovers. What can they do? Well, these government organisations can block an acquisition, they can block a merger or takeover if they find that the two businesses combining will lead to a significant lessening of competition, reduction in competition. And again, we note that could be a local, in a town, in a particular region, or at a national level. They have the power to allow the merger to go ahead, maybe perhaps providing that certain conditions are met. So for example, they might specify that the new enlarged firm sell off some of their businesses or assets to maintain competition in a particular area of the market. So competition authorities are part of the state. Each country will have one. So for example, the UK has the Competition and Markets Authority, and often if they're part of the EU, there will be the European Commission act as a competition authority as well. So if you want to merge or take over with another business, before it's completed, one of the requirements in law may be that you have to go to the competition authorities to check, or they may investigate you when they hear that this is what you're planning. So let's look at the Competition and Markets Authority in a bit more detail. On what basis will they start to investigate your proposed merger or takeover? Well, they will investigate, do a report, look at the market. They will investigate if the merger of two or more firms will result in a market share greater than 25%, so our definition for a legal monopoly, or the combined turnover of the two businesses, so the new business will have a combined turnover greater than £70 million. If either of these criteria are met, then the Competition and Markets Authority may investigate whether this merger should go ahead or not. What options do they have once they've concluded their investigation? Well, if they think there are no adverse effects on competition, maybe there is still a certain significant level of competition, or maybe the firms merging together might be able to benefit from economies of scale, and thus the consumer will not lose out, then they can say, fine, go ahead, allow the merger. Alternatively, they can say, no, this will significantly lessen the competition, we'll have a clear monopoly here, it's going to lead to exploitation of the customer, we can block it, we can say this cannot happen. Sometimes they might put in place remedies that try and maintain competition or perhaps address specific issues that the regulator, the Competition and Markets Authority, were concerned about. So for example, we might force the sale of certain assets. So you might say to a supermarket, yes, you can merge together, but in this particular town, one of these two supermarkets, you have to sell to a rival, a competitor. So we have still some competition. They may regulate, which we'll come on to a little bit later, or there may be some other special arrangements that they might put in place to ensure that there is still an element of competition. So let's look at some examples. Here on the left-hand side, our first example was a merger of two companies, SSE and npower. They're both energy companies. They sell electricity and gas. This merger was announced. There was an investigation by the Competition and Markets Authority, and then they concluded that this merger can proceed. There's no significant lessening of competition in this particular market. There are other energy providers. There are the potential to benefit from economies of scale here, so we can allow this one to go ahead. On the right hand side, we have a takeover here. Arla Foods Limited, which specialise in dairy products, took over Yeo Valley Dairies. Again, the Competition and Markets Authority investigated, and they gave this what they call phase 1 clearance, which basically means that the merger can go ahead. Now here are another two examples. The first one on the left hand side, a media company called 21st Century Fox. They own some shares in Sky, but they made a bid to take over the rest, so to really take over this other company, Sky TV and Productions. Now, the regulator investigated this and found that if they were to do that, there would be a significant lessening in competition and it would not be in the public's interest. So they blocked this takeover. As the regulator, the Competition and Markets Authority, can say no, we will not allow this merger, this takeover in this instance, to take place. Another example on the right hand side, this was a merger of two supermarkets, Asda and Sainsbury's. And they found that in certain areas, the CMA, when they investigated, they found in certain areas this would result in Asda and Sainsbury's being the only supermarket in that particular place. So they said, right, we can allow you to merge, but in those areas where you are the only supermarket, you will be the only supermarket, you have to sell one of those existing stores to a competitor. So you can merge, but you need to sell off 460 stores in those places where there is an overlap between Asda and Sainsbury's already. So, in evaluation, it can be difficult for the Competition and Markets Authority to gather evidence on which to make a decision. How do we know really what the impact is going to be on the level of competition and on consumers? The Competition and Markets Authority make their investigation by using industry experts. But sometimes it's difficult to gather industry experts who understand all the issues and are also fair and free from bias. Sometimes we may have concerns at different levels of markets. Now we might be concerned at a domestic level that allowing two companies to merge might create a monopoly. But actually that monopoly might be quite a successful business on a global level, can benefit from greater economies of scale, have a bigger marketing reach on a global level, and actually be quite a competitive business, providing jobs, providing tax revenues for the government. So we have to sometimes balance maybe what's bad at one level of market, a domestic level, with what might be good on a global level. Generally speaking, there is a tension between protecting customers and also allowing potential efficiencies that could be gained from mergers and takeovers to take place. And it's the competition authority's responsibility to try and manage this tension, decide what the trade-off, an acceptable trade-off, or the right answer should be. So in this video we've looked at how the competition authorities can protect consumers from mergers and takeovers. That's it. Thanks very much for listening.